Quick glance at all the levels. Everything's telling me it's all right. Good evening. Welcome all. Hope you're doing well. Good evening to, and the reason there was a slight pause in the stream is I put my glasses down somewhere and I can't find them. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun reading this off. But Del Kenobi, Chief Paranoid Officer, to Zaveth, Base Truther, to Brian Havoc, Makimus, Jamlak, Space Saga, Ashra, Viper Leo, Ray Lauderbeck, Daily Noob. Welcome all. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And hopefully this is coming through okay. I don't know. Welcome in, Luna. Good to see you. There we go. So yes, so trying to figure all this out without the ability to actually see is a little bit challenging. So yeah, we'll figure it out as we go along. I'm sure it. I just, when you're just like, I wonder if I've dropped it and it's rolled under my chair, but no, it hasn't. So, or rolled under my chair. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. You get the point. So there we go. Good evening, all. Good to see you. I need glasses to find my glasses. Never a truer word spoken. But there we go. Right. Which side is okay? So we'll offset that side, so I'll have this one off, so I can kind of modulate my volume and all that. But welcome in. Good to see you all. Lots to talk about. Mainly because obviously I wasn't around last Sunday. Apologies for that. I was just feeling pretty rough. I'm feeling a little bit better now. Obviously well enough to appear on camera. But we'll see how we go. I am kind of dosed up on painkillers and stuff, so hopefully it'll be fine. But if I do, knock it on the head early, then that's what we'll do. Today in the stream, what we're going to cover, we're going to have a look at what's going on in the minute. We've got the Red Festival stuff going on. A few other bits. We're going to have a look at the funding and the rather oddly timed Origin sale from Robert Space Industries, although that's kind of obviously ended now. And then we're going to have a look at what I think might be a release schedule for 2026. We'll get onto that in a little bit. I can't say too much now without giving it away, but I think CIG may have inadvertently confirmed the sorts of timings that are going on this year for major releases. And we'll have a look at that in just a little while. So yeah, a few things to get on with. And then we've got a couple videos to watch. One linked by our very own Widget, who's just come in, welcome, and one from Blam Smith. And if we've got time, we might have a look at the the Squadron 42 VR confirmation as well. But a few things to have a look at. An interview with Chris Roberts that happened in Australia, all the way down under, for the esports stuff. And then I want to have a look at a video from Havoc. Now, normally if I'm looking at videos from other creators, what I'll try to do is I'll try to have a look at them before I watch them, right? Generally speaking, unless they're a known quantity. I haven't watched much of Havoc stuff. But what I did watch was kind of the first 30 seconds, and it sounds like it was something that we could have a look at and maybe react to. And hey, if it either paints Havoc in a bad light or it's going down a weird rabbit hole that I don't want to, then I'll knock it on the head. And that's my apology to you guys, really, that basically I haven't had the chance to look at it yet. So if it starts going in a weird direction, I will, in the nicest possible way, shit can it. Good evening, Blansmith. Good evening, Notorious. But that's the plan for this evening. Obviously, because I'm feeling unwell, I'm just going to stick with diet caffeinated beverages as opposed to any sort of alcohol, which is a shame, because I do have a lot of Stofords in the fridge, but, whatever. This is the unfortunate reality of being a single guy who doesn't have a dishwasher. I do a lot to avoid washing up. So there we go. If I can not make plates dirty and stuff, that's better. So there we go. Anyway, information you didn't need to know. I know Luna's just rolled her eyes at me. Sorry, mate, but that's where we are. Okay, so let's have a look then at a few things that are going on. Some of this will be stuff catching up. Some of this will be a lot more recent. So let's have a look. I'm trying to make sure I've got the wrong thing. No, I don't. I definitely don't want the wrong thing. I want the right thing selected. So here we go. Okay, so Red Festival and stuff is up. I'm not going to go through a huge amount of this. I will say, obviously, there's the red envelope hunt stuff that's going off, and I think basically, as long as you ham one of those in, I think you'll get displays anyway. For those that don't already have the display case, you'll get a display stand if you don't already have one. If you do, you don't get it because you've already got it. But there we go. they've got the competition about kind of screenshots and stuff. I mean, you guys will have seen most of this, and then the obligatory, obviously, kind of coin, free to claim. Go to the website, make sure you're logged in. You'll claim it. It will be yours. In game, obviously not for real, and then a ridiculous number of paints and stuff. Now, there's only really two things on here that I went, oh, I kind of like those, and I'm still not sure yet. One is the armor, looks kind of all right. I don't mind it, and the other one is the Red Lantern display. Aside from that, all the paints and stuff, they're a little bit on the gaudy side for me, which is weird because I like the hazard paint for the C1, the yellow and black, but this just feels a little bit gaudy. But there's that. Yeah, I don't know. Has anyone else kind of been tempted by anything from the Red Festival? Has anyone gone for any of this stuff? Has anyone kind of like, Badges, you're wrong, this skin's incredible, what are you talking about, you weirdo? Or is everyone else just like, oh good, another ship paint sale? I'd be interested to know. In the meantime, the one that I did want to look at was this here, right? Was the Anvil Carrack. Okay, so there's a War Bond upgrade to it. Now, the interesting thing about the Carrack is that it kind of sits in a very interesting place within. Why? There we go. It sits at that kind of upper end of ship prices, right? The downside to it is if you look at all the ships available, it's really hard to kind of upgrade to. Just because there aren't any good choices or there are very few good choices close to it. Okay, so if we take the Carrack and we take the War Bond edition, and then we look at the upper end, you can see that first two choices there are not great. Okay, so the Hull D, because it's not released at the moment, we know that it's going to go up in price, and I would suggest the Hull D is going to go up again quite significantly given its proximity to other stuff. The Ironclad Assault, again, is going to go up in price once it's released, and we think that that's this year, so those might not be the best ships to kind of jump up towards the Carrack. So your best choice here is the Hercules, which leaves you with, you know, a not insignificant jump to make up to the War Bond. So, whilst I kind of like the gap that the Carrack sits in the CCU chain because it's a nice way to jump up, actually, it might be better if you're playing the long game to sit at one of these lower level kind of CCUs and then use that to jump. So yeah, the Hull C went up 150 USD as Daily Noob says when it came out, and he's not wrong. It went up a significant amount. So yeah, there's a few kind of things there to consider, I guess, if you're playing the CCU game. Obviously, I don't get into kind of the specifics with people, but you know, it's worth thinking if that's your sort of thing. If you are one of the people who wants to have a look at that sort of way of upgrading to ships, which generally tends to take longer, but there can be nice savings to be had, then that might not be a way for you to do it. Jukester, welcome in, buddy. Good to see you. And there we go. Just so that you're aware, if you are looking for some chill live stream stuff to watch, especially during the afternoon here in the UK, I guess slightly earlier over in the US, then you can't do better than Noob. Go, head over to Noob. He does community games, plays Star Citizen, and other stuff as well. Go check him out. Awesome creator, very chill. And for those that were here for the CitizenCon Direct stuff, you'll have seen Noob and I get inappropriately drunk on stream. That was good fun. Just inappropriately drunk, not inappropriately anything else. There might have been some pepperami, if I remember, Noob, at some point in there. That's not a euphemism, but that. So there we go. So Matt, welcome in. So I'm literally just mentioning the Carrack CCU in passing because it's one of the war bonds at the moment, obviously alongside the Hermes and the Moth. So we're just having a very quick look at it and how I kind of like the space that it occupies in terms of value, but also covering that it's not the easiest thing to get up to. You're probably looking at an M2 to make that jump. So there we go. Well, yeah, absolutely, Noob. We might need to do a remote one next time, but we'll have a look. Maybe if I win the lottery sometime between there and then, I'll come and give you a visit in Aussie land. But as we can see, then a little bit of a change on the funding dashboard. we're seeing now months sitting, I don't know, apparently not lower than 8.5 million. So by the end of this month, we'll have cleared $950 million, which is kind of crazy. We can see the effects of a couple of the sales. We've had things like the Origin sale, the Moth coming out, all that sort of stuff. So there's been some stuff to play with. And then obviously as everything changes over the month, you get the packs and stuff go on sale as well. We are well on track, I would suggest, at what, 8 mil a week to be 5-6 weeks away from a billion, which puts us, I think that's going to be just before, potentially, that's going to be just before ILW. So we're gonna, I don't think we're just going to hit a billion. We're going to rocket past it in spectacular fashion. But there we go. You won a Hermes this week. Well done, Blam. Where'd you win that? Nicely done, mate. Base CCUs last week were only available on Origin sale. Could chain one 600 variant perfectly to the other. Yeah, I saw that. That was looking pretty good. So yeah, sales will blow through the roof when the last concept is shown this year. Well, yes, quite. I don't know how they're going to manage that, because obviously it will be hull limited, as all of those ships of that kind of size and power and kind of build time are. But yeah, I mean, what do we think? What do we reckon? Go on, nail your colours to the mast, as we say in the Navy. What do people think? What's going to be the price of the battle cruiser? Where do we reckon? 5K says Daily Noob. 4.5 says Space Saga. What was that? 3,200 war bonds says Base Truther. I think that's I mean, given the price of the Javelin, I think that's quite a conservative estimate there. 4K seems right, says Blam. 5K even, says Widget. 5K plus, says Matt. Yeah. I mean, we can have a chat about it. I mean, what I'm quite happy. I keep whiting myself out. I don't know why. Is it that thing? No, it's not. It's what is behind the screen. But whatever. I'll fix that later. Is it very kind of? Is the screen very granular for you guys, or is it all right? I guess because it's smaller, it'll look better quality. But yeah. We can have a look at the ships. I'm kind of want to do a video maybe about looking at what we can achieve with, or what they might put into a battle cruiser over and above weapons and shields and armor and hangar size and stuff like that. I think there's other things that people will be discussing about that. And more to the point, there'll be other things that CIG will want to put into the battle cruiser to make it this kind of really incredible ship. Because you know what's going to happen. They're going to blow through a billion, and then all the headlines are going to be Star Citizen achieves $1 billion in crowdfunding. It's still not enough. They still want more. They've just released their most expensive ship ever. Blah, blah, blah. And it's going to do its normal round of, you know, kind of sensationalist reporting. Like this hasn't been what Star Citizen's done from the start. Like this hasn't been how it works from the start. You know, people will feign shock and outrage and, you know, that kind of shocked Pikachu face. You know, almost as shocked as Hassan's dog at the fact that CIG do in fact sell ships to fund their game. So yeah, there we go. It looks fine to you. Good. I reckon it's got at least one size 3 gun on it. I mean, I think it's bold of you to assume there, Daily Noob. But yeah, there we go. So that's that, and then it's always worth looking at, as I get flashbanged by my own screen, it's always worth looking at this. I don't know what that was. There we go. Ta-da. So we had a bumper year last year. We had a ridiculously bumper year last year. We up by a ridiculous amount, and we are already ahead of that we are almost at the point we're getting about 9 mil, just under 9 mil per month at the moment. So hang on, I said 8 mil per week. I've lost it, haven't I? I've lost it. All right, the math ain't mathing, boys and girls. Per month. Wait, what? 404, badges not found. There we go. Right, let's go back to this. So per week, there we go. Sorry, that's it. So per month, we're talking 8. So, all right. So we won't have blown past the billion mark by ILW. ILW will likely do that for us because we've got, what, March and April. So that's another 18, or there's another, what, 16 mil on top. Might not even by ILW, you know. It might be a little bit longer than that. But that's okay, because then we get the news cycle in the right way, which is Star Citizen's approaching $1 billion, and now they're releasing the most expensive ship. That real was brain wasn't braining. But there we go. Badges, have you had a chance to look at the February jump point? Nick's R&R stations are awesome. Great, you see them not just reuse the Stanton or Pyro assets. I haven't, so I'm not a subscriber at the minute. But that's good to hear. And yeah, the fact that they're not reusing those assets is kind of cool. But I haven't seen them. Look forward to seeing those when they come out, because that's 4.7, isn't it? We're getting that in 4.7. So yes, good. Viper Leo says, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that the Battlecruiser cruisers only be available to be seen by at least concierge level backers? No, I think they're going to be open to everyone. I think they're going to be open to everyone. What Matt says might be correct, that we'll get the first chance to have a go at them, but I think it will be the normal level stuff. I mean, if CIG want to combat the F5 wars and the constant buying and you know, then selling on the grey market, they could do. I suppose the other thing they could do is make them non-giftable, given their size. I don't know if the Javelin can be. No clue, but there we go. 500 size 3 guns as Chief Paranoid Officer on the Battlecruiser. I mean, possibly not. But we're talking what? Maybe 5 months now at 8 million a month. Puts us at 9, 8. And then with a couple of ship sales, a couple of above average months maybe, then, you know, maybe 5-6 months' time, we'll be up on the 1 billion mark. Which will be anything. I don't think anything above $1,000 is giftable. No, hopefully not. Which will at least stop this constant, like the Pioneer suffers. In fact, no, the Pioneer's not giftable either, is it? But I know, is it? I think the Pioneer might be. Basically, what I'm saying is this constant grey market selling of big ships. That. Limited digital sales is all FOMO BS anyway. Shame they do it, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm kind of neither here nor there on it. I suppose only because the ships that I want, none of them were really hull limited. But I don't think the Pioneer or 890 giftable either. No, I don't think so. I had that idea in my head. It might not be true, but then again, I don't own either of them, so I wouldn't be able to say for sure without Googling it. And seeing as I'm so far away from my PC now, I won't be doing that. But yeah, so that's where we are with that. Significant jump in funding. Again, we're talking, what was the year to date at that point? I really can't read these. But that was 8 million. That was 8 million. So we're at 16 million for those. Is that about right? And then we're just over, or just under 18 million for this one. So yeah, kind of scary, to be honest. I have sent you a link in Discord. Okay, I'll have a look in a minute, mate. Yeah. Oh, didn't want to pull that one up there. I pulled that up on entirely the wrong screen. I didn't mean to do that. But there we go. Okay, is that the rest stop stuff? Is it? We'll have a look at that in a second. Okay. So here's the interesting bit that I want to talk to you all about. Okay. we know that the roadmap is split into two parts. We know that we have the release view and the progress tracker. The release view is stuff that's coming up in the next couple of patches, and then the 1.0 card has just got like a ballpark, here's all the stuff that we want to throw into it. And it may come sooner, but it's going to be in by 1, right? We know that stuff. We also know that the progress tracker is what they're working on, even if it's not going to be released at the end of that sprint time. And in fact, it comes with the warning that, hey, just because it says that that's when the work stops, doesn't mean that it's finished. It just means the work stops, right? So a really good example for this would be if it was around at the time, you've got kind of pyro work, right? Pyro might be complete, but until they got server meshing in, we were never going to get it. So it's that sort of stuff, right? So just because the work on, say, some of the pyro worlds is complete, it's not an indicator of finish date. Okay, however, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about here and go through. Okay, so this is the first in fact, I don't know why I pulled this one up. This is an old one. So this is 3 release views old, right? This is the one at the end of January. Okay, so this is the update to 4.7. We've got Rock Cracker, which is this one at the top up here. We've got the next set of Nyx missions. We got the People's Service Station, okay, which is what Widget was talking about just then. And then we've got a few other bits, okay? And then the last one that we had, not this week, but a couple of weeks ago, we had this. Okay, so they confirmed that they'd released everything that they've released. Lovely. And then they were like, okay, well, in 4.7, you're also going to get some outfits. There's extra heavy combat armor, there's extra light combat armor, and there's the Claw Salamanders faction. Great. Fine. Whatever. The interesting bit for me was this, is they added all these things with a progress tracker, and we've only seen this one other time, and that was like 4 release views ago. They put very specific dates on the end. So when they've talked about progress tracker before, they just say what's being added. What they then don't say is this bit. Now there's 2 bits that stand out for this for me, right? If you notice, okay, well, there's 3 bits. The first bit is the obvious. There's an actual date. The second bit is that these are extended to, not added. Okay, so these are extensions to ongoing work, i.e. they're giving them more time, not rushing them. The third bit that stands out with this is that if you notice, we are going to get a patch every month. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit. See if any of this rings true to you guys. January, March, May, July, September, November. Okay, that's every other month of a release this year, which is what they confirmed that they were going to do when Benoit and Jared had their chat. Okay, each of those months was mentioned here. Now, normally I would write that off as a yeah, whatever, except the 2 that are due to schedule in March have now been confirmed for, or set to tentative, for release in March. Right? So they were extended to take advantage of the fact that they had more time before the patch that they were due in is actually being released. So going back to that one, go back to those timings. Crafting tier 0 and infantry, and inventory, both due to come in March. The next patch, the vehicle command module, FPS, radar, and scanning, both due to come the patch after both due to finish in May, alongside the landing service, which is land in a hangar and get repair, rearm, and restock other ships. Interestingly, it doesn't say refuel. I guess it means to say refuel. And then instancing in July. Do you see where I'm going at with this? Right? Is that they've given these more time, and these extensions all correspond with months we're expecting patches. Now, I could be completely barking up the wrong tree, and none of this changes what normally happens with patches where features aren't ready so they don't make it in. But to me, this looks like we're getting the command module in 4.8, we're getting FPS radar and scanning in 4.8, we're getting instancing, i.e. Siege of Orison, in July. Which is interesting. Because they've confirmed Siege of Orison, right, is going to be the first instance, for those people that have missed that and sat there wondering what the hell I'm banging on about. Does that make sense? Well, I don't know if FPS radar and scanning is for the Ironclad, but everything else. So normally I don't normally look at the progress tracker at all. When I do, I absolutely don't try to connect it. It's just the fact that they've been extended. Crafting and inventory were extended until the end of this month now. We're in March, aren't we? Yeah. The end of this month, at the same time that we're expecting a patch. Or in the same month that we're expecting a patch. And then they confirmed that it was going into the patch that they've been extending to. We also know that the command modules, because we're expecting the Ironclad and stuff to come this year, likely we'll get it at the same time or at roughly the same time. Instancing we're expecting this year. The ship hangar landing services is one of the precursors to the tactical fleet operations or tactical fleet battles or whatever they could call it. I can never remember. But that's a precursor to that, which we know is coming this year. The only bit in there that was like is the FPS radar and scanning for me. So that's kind of interesting. And I think that might be where we're going. Sorry, so yeah. So hangar, sorry, is May. FPS, so that you've also got FPS radar and scanning in May as well. So interesting. Yeah, that's where I think that is. I think that's likely what's going on, which means that we now know that Ironclad likely ILW, or possibly ILW. Just because they put the command module in doesn't mean the Ironclad's going to come with it, right? Because it's also being implemented for the Drake Caterpillar. But it would be kind of cool, and we know that the Ironclad's in the works anyway. FPS radar and scanning. They did say during CitizenCon Direct that, you know, what I think a bunch of the comments in the chat were, hey, you're just spoiling this. We've not got all the facts that you know, you're just telling us everything that's coming. And they went, no, we're not. So maybe that was the FPS radar and scanning part. So, yeah. That's what I think is happening. And instancing then with July, we know that there's going to be Siege of Orison, and then shortly afterwards, or at some point, I shouldn't say shortly, I've got no evidence that it's shortly, but at some point afterwards with the instancing, it's going to be the Levski stuff, which sounds like it might be a way of continuing on. Maybe the Melina mold was an attempt by this new faction to actually undermine Levski further, and that it was intentional, and that the fact that we turn the Melina mold situation around and Levski doesn't become a, you know, a dead station that no one goes on because it's a biohazard, we rescue it. That's how I would see it playing out. And then they escalate their plan to something a bit more direct and confrontational, and that's where we go there with the instancing to switch all the air stuff back on and fight the guys that are trying to hold us off. That's what it sounds like. So yeah. I'm looking forward to the Ironclad. Says Daily Noob. Give me my flying shoebox. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun ship to fly. It's certainly anticipated. When I say fun ship to fly, it's got all the aerodynamics of a breeze block. So I don't know how fun to fly it's going to be, but yeah, she's I think she's probably going to catch people out with just how big she is. I think the problem is the pictures don't really do her scale justice. I think she's going to be terrifyingly big. but that's going to be cool. I'm keen to see how this handle if the command module or the rest of the ship are destroyed or not in the hangar. I guess claim the whole ship? Probably. I'm guessing. I'll take it low flying day one. I will be watching that. Let me know. Sling me a message on Discord. You'll probably need to play it on fast forward because it's not going to look very quick, right? You have to knock G-safe stuff off. And Atmo flight for large ships should be like a submarine and work on a buoyancy system, because if you can walk around the ship, gravity should be factored, so keeping the ship level. I mean, there's certainly we'll see with the atmospheric flight stuff, right? I don't think, from what they've said, if you look back at the CitizenCon where they showed us their atmospheric flight model, and they basically showed the Gladius, right? I think it was Gladius, and you know, they kind of stalled it so it dropped and went nose down, and then picked up speed and naturally kind of came out, you know, and went nose up again. From what they were saying about thrusters in that thrusters will overheat after a short period of time, depending on, you know, how heavy your ship is, how big the thrusters are, all that sort of good stuff, right? So I don't think we're going to stop getting caterpillars kind of hanging in the air, nose down, just suspended. They just won't stay in that attitude for very long before they start to have real control problems, which is, you know, that'll be good. I'll be surprised if the Ironclad can hover an Atmo upside down. Well, yeah, we'll see. I think one of the things that I'll have to do for that is, you know, they'll have to stop quantum jumping us to the point where we come out of quantum upside down. If they're going to do that, then quantum jumps to planet locations need to always make sure you are oriented away from the planet rather than, you know, right way up rather than upside down. Because otherwise that's going to be a bit of a problem, right? Okay, so there was an interview done in... I'm just going to have a quick look at the details here. There was an interview done... this is Back Pocket. I'll pop a link in the video in a little while, okay? But it basically says here, recorded on Friday, 20th of February, Josh got to sit down with Chris Roberts, Cloud Imperium Games, when he was in Sydney, Australia for the Atmo Esports event, to have a chat about the game. So what I think we'll do is we'll watch or listen through this, stop, have a chat about it, but I haven't seen this yet. So if you haven't seen this, we're watching this for the first time together. So let's have a look, see what the boss has got to say, see how many foot picks it's going to cost for a battlecruiser, and let's go.
Say that Star Citizen was unfinished business. I think when we launched in 2012, it was a different time in the internet. I think it was more hopeful, more optimistic, less cynical. I think one of the major problems with doing something that's as long-term as Star Citizen and as big and as ambitious as Star Citizen is if you're part of the community and you see us, because we do updates, the community video updates, we show them what we're doing, we have roadmaps. In terms of, I think, being a developer that shares and is open, you know, I think we sort of set the standard, and I think when we started in 2012, that was one of the things that we did first that a lot of other people didn't. So we had all the...
Sorry, I want to respond to something Ash has put in chat, which is, couldn't reply, they're still selling 1K ships on the grey market, they just sell them with accounts. Yeah, which is what I think goes back to what Viper Leo was saying about if you sell that to concierge first, it means you have to sell your concierge account. Which is weird. Or you'd have to buy everything just to make it concierge, transfer everything out of the account other than the ship itself and then sell it, which seems like a big hassle. Because then you've got a bunch of assets that if you're buying that purely as a business transaction, that it won't sell. But yes, sorry. Just go back a little bit in that if people don't mind.
Video updates, we show them what we're doing, we have roadmaps. In terms of, I think, being a developer that shares and is open, you know, I think we sort of set the standard, and I think when we started in 2012, that was one of the things that we did first that a lot of other people didn't. So we had all this openness, which I think if you know it, you're like, oh yeah, this is a real game. But if you don't, and you've just said, wasn't that something that got crowdfunded like all those years ago, you may be a bit skeptical because you don't. I mean, I generally find that. I mean, I run into people who say, "Oh, I backed that like 12 years ago. Is it done yet?" I'm like, "Oh, like you can play it now if you want. You know, you look at the videos. I mean, you got."
Yeah, I mean, there's something that I want to kind of pick out of that he said at the beginning is that the internet is definitely more skeptical now, and I'm not saying that it's not without reason, right? Cough, cough, ashes of creation, cough. Um, it's not without reason, but it certainly does appear at the moment on the internet to be far easier to burn things down than it does to build them up. I don't think that's an unfair statement to make. And also, and I've said this once before. In fact, I think it was even the title or the intro for one of my videos previously, which is the only thing more likely to piss gamers off than not giving them what they want is giving them exactly what they ask for. So it's things like, let's use Cyberpunk as an example, right? Gamers don't want incomplete games. They don't want games that have massive patches day one. They don't want games that are released broken. But try delaying something. What gamers actually want, which is a little immature, and I'm talking very broad brushstrokes, right? I'm not applying this to everyone, but what the community at large, the gaming community at large, seems to want is for people to say, this is where we're going to release something, and to stick to that, and for there to not be any delays, not being any unforeseen issues, not be a pandemic, not be anything like that, right? Anything that could possibly cause a delay, and for it to release exactly when it's said in a finished state, and for people to be able to predict that 1-2 years into the future, right? You look at the hype that followed Cyberpunk around it. I'll just use Cyberpunk as an example. You know, people wanted it to be everything that it should have been the moment it was released, but you're not allowed to delay it in order to ensure that that happens. And it's, you know, it's the case with a lot of stuff. Now, Star Citizen might be a slightly different case here because it has been in development for so bloody long. However, that argument stands, and there'll be more on my. I'm going to do a video for when it looks like we're about to smash 1 billion. I'm going to try and get it out there a couple of weeks before we do, just to head off the whole, you know, games media bollocks. I mean, it's not my job to fix that, but there we go. Parker, welcome in. Good to see you. Jello Drifter, good to see you, buddy. At the same time, COG's estimations have obviously missed wildly. Content creators are more cynical for sure, absolutely. It's almost as if having a finished game before announcing the release date is a good idea. Yeah, and the problem then goes, so you create it, then how much hype do you give it? How long do you go before releasing it? Because there has to be some sort of crossover, right? And the other thing is, you know, what people call scope creep is, can you imagine the frustration if people release a game and there's a much anticipate, or the feature that everyone goes, oh my god, how did you not put this in the game? How did you not see it? And the studio go, well, hey, yeah, no, we saw that. As we played it through, we didn't think about it in the concept stage. As we played it through, we realized that it really needed this feature. But we didn't want death threats by delaying the game, so we decided not to do it, so no one got pissed off at us delaying the game. And then people go, well, no, that's okay for a delay. All right, well, can we get everyone's approved what's okay for a delay versus what's not okay for a delay, and go from there. So I think he's true in what he's saying, is that it's far easier at the moment to dunk on stuff than it is to go, do you know what? No, hey, this is pretty good, like that sort of stuff. The sorts of games that get that accolade from people. I mean, you look at Hello Games and the way they push through with No Man's Sky. That's quite the story, but I don't know how many studios are doing what Hello Games did with that. They seem to be the exception rather than the rule. But they took a game which was massively disappointing on launch and have turned it into something that's really quite fun to play now, and is really quite something. Most studios, a la Cyberpunk, when it gets bad press, even though they've done an amazing job of updating it and putting it back to something that's far much more fun. There's a reason we're not getting any more DLC for Cyberpunk. And people go, no, we've had DLC. Yeah, we've had little bits. We've had photo editors and we've had that sort of stuff. We've had some cars added. It's not what I consider to be, proper content. That's just extra features, right? But there we go. Anyway, moving to Sean.
At the scale that we've been crowdfunded, it certainly created new opportunities and possibilities because the funding was much stronger than I had originally thought. I mean, because when I originally did it, I thought, I could make a smaller game and it would be more like a privateer or a freelancer and have a cutscene as you go down to a planet and then you have a little limited area you interact on. And yeah, that's a much more limited design. But because we got all the extra funding, especially early, it's sort of like, oh, well, maybe we could really, go for the brass ring here and like my dream game, not the thing that I would have to do because this was a limited budget. And so it opened up the scope of the game, which at the time the community, they voted to say, yes, we would like to do these extra things like procedural planets and all the rest of the stuff. But then when you build the game much bigger, it's just exponentially more complicated, more things to do, so it obviously takes longer. And I guess maybe the only other downside is we're the big thing, and so everyone's like, oh, $1 billion, where are you? What are you doing? And, like, you haven't finished yet. You guys are a scam. You're idiots, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, we're just trying to make the best game we possibly can.
Which is really interesting for me, right? So he said that we all voted for those things. I'm not entirely sure where those votes came from. Right now, I'm not saying that I don't think the game should have had the extra stuff in it. Right, that's not what I'm saying at all. The way the game is now versus what was pitched, I think this is infinitely better. I'm gonna put that out there. Right, this whole idea of no loading screens, of once you're in the game, that's it. And everything happens on that scale is crazy. He seems to indicate that the scope creep was because of the extra money. Blamsmith seems to think the extra money was because of the scope creep, and I know he's not alone. I'm not singling you out there, Blam, at all. So it's probably just one of those perpetual cycles, right? People are like, hey, we could add more stuff. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, here's more money. Oh, we've got more money. We could do this. Oh, yeah, that sounds really good. Here's more money. Oh, we've got more money. And it's a cycle, right? And it's like the snake eating its own tail. It's really hard to figure out like where the whole thing starts and begins, right? Or ends and begins. So yes, I think that's... Blasphemous says, I think I would have spent a 20th on what I had if it was the original scope. I've still got a bookmark to where Chris talks about, and I've shown it on a couple of streams, so you may well have seen it. I've got a bookmark to where Chris talked about there being a cutscene when you land, and then there being almost like the StarCraft between missions, right? StarCraft 2, where you've got the bar and then you've got the research area and then you've got the bridge and then you've got the blah, 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 blah. That's how he was describing going to a station and then going to your hangar and then going to the bar and then going to the cargo area and all that sort of stuff. That's how it was going to be. That was genuinely how this started out. And then, who's it? Widget says it was a poll on the original forums. Interesting. So it was actually a vote then. That's good. Rick Shaw, welcome in. I doubt I'd pay as much if it was the original Nintendo game. Yeah. The issue now is that the scope is starting to shrink. I don't know if it's starting to shrink. Do you mean in terms of like the 5 planet or 5 systems for the original launch? Do you mean something else, Blamsmith? But while you answer that, let's just watch the next bit. Also, I love this. The RSI doors. I mean, all right. Spend the money on the game, you buggers, but that's actually quite cool.
Everyone at Cloud Imperium loves what they do, and they're working really hard to get everything finished as quickly as they possibly can. It's a really big, ambitious goal. So maybe that's the only downside is the success just makes you get everything finished as quickly as they possibly can. It's a really big ambition.
Dogs in the office? Maybe I need to change the job I'm doing. What do you reckon? CIG, you want to give me a job? Send me an email. Links in my about. I've got a contact email. CIG, you want to give me a job? I'll do it.
Goal. So maybe that's the only downside is, the success just makes you more visible, and then there's some level of people that kind of like to rag on that. But I'm happy with how it's turned out, just because I'm literally, like I said, getting to build the game of my dreams, and I think it's the game of a lot of the people that are backing the streams, and that's one of the reasons why it works.
I got the option to tell Chris exactly that at CitizenCon 2019. He was stood at the end of the line. You had a booklet with all the various stuff in for the couple of days, and it was all immersion, right? It was all role play, and there was a safety warning even in 2019 about travel to Pyro. How we laughed. But all that sort of stuff, and then you got to go down, and there was Todd Pappy, and there was I don't think Rich Tyra was there, but there was everyone else. It's Sean. Was it Sean Murphy? No, not Sean Murphy. He's someone else. But yeah, so Sean, and there was Todd Pappy, and there was all the guys sat in the line. Jared was there, and you got to get them to sign different bits. So I got him to sign "This is my favorite ship" on the Carrick page, and he obviously didn't write that at all, but that's what I asked him to write. And then at the end of the line was Chris, and I said to him, I said, you are building the game I've always dreamed of playing. And I don't think he's building a game anymore. I think he's building a universe simulation with a bunch of activities that make it a game. But you look at how Planet Tech's being put together and all that sort of stuff. This is as close as we're getting to a first real virtual world, right? And it's not just a world; it's a universe. So that's kind of cool. POI landings would have been like the freelancer game. Exactly that. That's exactly what it is. They've revolutionized gaming. They can make any games on the engine they made. No other studio can. Julio Reyes says, "Welcome in, buddy. Want happy developers that stay on? Let them have their doggos come to work." Exactly that. So yeah, half seat, half dog. Exactly that. If AI becomes self-aware and is put into the virtual world, it's basically future world. Well, I mean, I don't want to go down the AI rabbit hole too far, right? But having AI within strict boundaries manage your conversations. Can you imagine actually having a verbal conversation with an NPC? That'd be cool, right? So the NPC actually manages its responses and understands what it can and can't tell you, what it does and doesn't know, what it can and can't answer. You program it within those bounds, but then you couch that in AI responses to a conversation. So rather than going down the list a la Cyberpunk, Fallout, whatever, and selecting the option that you want, how cool would it be that you ask what you want and you get an answer back from the character like a real conversation? That'd be kind of cool. But, I mean, probably out with the scope of Star Citizen, right? At least by 1.0. But how fucking cool would that be? So there we go. Hugo says, that's what I'm saying. People complain about the future creep and that it's taking too long. But we have the game that was first envisioned. SC would have failed by now. I think that's a very good point. I think that's very likely. Widget says, in my opinion, the thing which makes SC special is Chris is building the game he wants to play. It sounds simple, but it's unheard of. That's it. So there's a forums. I think they still exist, right? But they killed the bit that I went to it for. It's MMORPG, right? And what I loved about it was it actually had a section of the forums for people who were wanting to build a game. And the one thing that was said over and over again is, if you want to build a game, you're not going to build an MMO. But there were some great ideas in there. And what you instead had was what it became was a forum about a lot of people going, hey, I've got a great idea for a game and I think I should sell this idea to a studio. And there was an actual answer from a developer who came in and went, guys, he's like, I'm going to be the voice of reason here. No one's ever going to buy your idea. Ever. No one is. He says the only way you can do that is if you create something like Cyberpunk with, Cyberpunk Red. And that the guy who made that didn't make Cyberpunk for computer. He came up with this world of Cyberpunk, and there's been all these spin-offs, and then he was approached to make a game about it, right? In exactly the same way that Games Workshop made Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar and the Heresy and everything else. People then approach them for a game, and that's the only way you can get it sold. He's like, because every game developer has ideas of the games they would really like to build. Why would they make yours over their own? And so there is something to that, Widget. The fact that he's going, this is the game that I've always wanted to play. And yes, of course there's scope creep. There's never not been scope creep with this, because they're giving him more money and all these things that he said, yeah, well, maybe, there's no way I'll be able to do that because no one's going to foot the bill for that. We all went, oh, well, I'll foot the bill for it. I'll buy X number of ships or whatever. And in return, hopefully we'll get the game that we want. Now, it's a dangerous game to play because what you're then contending with is potentially millions of people who all have a slightly different idea of what they want. And at this stage, while things are still very nebulous, i.e. we don't know what hacking or data running or science gameplay is going to look like in the game right now. We have no idea what all of that's going to look like. So everyone has their own ideas, and at this stage it's very dangerous because what it might become is things that people didn't want. Oh, well, that's not what I had in my head, and how dare you not telepathically know and think my idea is better and that my idea was magically going to be the one that was going to be the best if implemented. So it's again, someone said double-edged sword earlier, and that's exactly what it is. But it's kind of interesting. So there we go. I want to see QR code minigames that you can scan on the screen and use your mobile to connect to a web game that will make your avatar in the verse animate to play. I mean, possibly. There's all sorts of stuff. I think one of the things that MMOs haven't done yet that they could utilize in the future, and maybe we'll see this, is I haven't seen an MMO yet effectively monetize something you can do on your mobile while you're nowhere near your computer. The closest I've ever seen come to that, and it wasn't monetized for any length of time, was the Blizzard auction house app. But something you can do on your game, on your phone, either as a mini game or some other thing that meaningfully contributes to your MMO while you're away from your computer, and then monetize that. But there we go. Maybe I'm just a filthy corpo, right? So that could be a thing. Anyway, let's tune back in.
When I was doing freelancer, I don't know if you remember, but I'd actually talked about doing a freelancer online, and the idea was this living, breathing universe that all these players played in, and it would affect the economy and do everything. And it was sort of when Ultima Online was taking off, and there is an online version of Freelancer that you can play, and I think modders keep it alive, and it's pretty cool. But what Star Citizen is now is sort of like the ultimate evolution of that. It's like the dream of the fully realized, detailed universe that you can go do anything with, millions of other people, and that is the ultimate goal for Star Citizen, and was sort of the original vision that I had when I was talking about Freelancer Online. Much the same way that I think Squadron 42, that we're just in the process of finishing off now, is like the ultimate version of how I would do a Wing Commander with resources that you wouldn't normally get. And I'm actually really quite looking forward to people playing the game, because there's been a lot of work to make the sort of story and the game basically seamless in how it goes in and out. It's very fluid. Star Citizen has high fidelity, but Squadron takes it to another level, because we know it's much more limited in terms of like set pieces and epic action. Those are absolutely like handcrafted and beautiful. And for me, it's my love letter to all the movies that I grew up with. I hope people like it like much as I do, and how much I have fun making it.
CIG showed off just how effective they are when they take their scope and vision and apply it in a very focused way with ASD. ASD for me is still hands down the best in-game experience for Star Citizen, which is a shame because it completely voids ships, right? However, the logistics centers where you go and get the Vandal cryopods, where you go and fight the Shattered Blade, you go onto the station, you do the different warehouses and stuff, is also very, very good. And that has a lot more ship-based elements to it. You've got to move around. Now, for the sake of speed running it, most people won't take the ships. They'll take little bikes and stuff and move between. But we took the Perseus there the last time we did it, and that was good fun because, yeah, it was slapping size out of the sky, left, right, and centre, which was a lot of fun. But we'll have a look at that in a second.
So one of the biggest things that takes us time is we've had systems that we wrote years ago when people were thinking, oh, the game's not going to need all this, and then we got to go, okay, that system's not good enough. We need to refactor the system so it scales better when there's a lot of players. So we want to have as big as possible player environments at the highest concurrency. So we don't quite know what the ceiling is going to be, but with dynamic, it allows us to be much more flexible because we can dynamically spin up more and more servers to sort of collapse down the servers taking care of people. So, I mean, the goal is to have 10,000 plus people in a shard or an instance. Right now, we run 700 to 800 people.
Holy shit. 10,000 plus people in a shard. Holy cow. Yeah. And I think that's, I won't say rare, right? But I say rare because we don't hear from him that often nowadays. But that's some honesty that is rare in the industry, which is we're building out server meshing. We have static, which is we take a game space and we go, how many servers do we want to run this realistically? And then they split that up. So if you've got, at the moment, if you've got a shard with 10 players on it, you have just as many servers spun up for it as you do as a shard that's maxed out, right? Which is why I played at the early hours of this morning, and there obviously weren't a lot of people on because the AI were vicious. They were terrifying. I was healing after almost every, not even gunfight, like part way through a gunfight, I'd wipe a couple people out, back off, heal, go back in, take a couple more people out, back off, because the AI were absolutely murderous. And this is just in a normal underground facility. This isn't anywhere scary. This is somewhere that, frankly, I could navigate with my eyes closed. A little bit scary, right? Dynamic obviously is different because not only will it spin up and take offline servers as it needs to based on servers. So rather than just going, hey, okay, we've got 9 servers running this shard, for example, but only 3 of them are in use because that's where the players are. And what I'll do is I'll wait until players get next to and then I'll spin up the adjacent servers. We don't even have that yet, which is kind of what quasi-server meshing is going to be. It's going to be the servers determining by themselves how many servers they need online in total from Amazon Web Services, which means you'll get peaks and troughs with demand, right? Dynamic is not just that. Dynamic is then, hey, we've got all of our servers brought online for this shard, but we've got a lot of players in this area having a fleet battle and it's beginning to affect performance. So we're going to spin up another server and not just like split the game space, but it might be that all of the calculations for this, and this are being used on this server, but all the calculations for the other stuff are being used on that server. So 2 servers effectively running the same game space, not by chopping it in half, but by removing functions and allocating different functions. You know, let's say you've got 40 players all rock up on their Talon Shrikes and they all launch all of their missiles at the same time. That's going to cause an issue with the server because all of a sudden it's dealing with, you know, fucking God knows how many missiles in the air all at the same time. Whereas if you can spin up a server and it just takes the missile calculations and leaves everything else to the other server and they just talk to each other about it, that's what dynamic server meshing is looking like it's going to be at the moment, certainly from the last couple of ways that they described it. And that's what he's talking about, is we don't know how effective we can make that, and until we know how effective we can make that, we can't determine a server cap.
on one.
Oh,
We'll probably break over 1,000, I'm pretty sure, this year. When we go down out, maybe 1 to 2,000. There's still optimization that has to happen in like the engine for just general simulation stuff. Because it's actually, it's a really interesting like engineering challenge, because like most game programmers don't consider how a game will run when you would have thousands of players. I mean, they usually don't consider when you have thousands of just entities or objects. For me, that's fun, because then it makes the universe itself gets alive when you have lots of players. I mean, it's already like in Star Citizen, when we went from 100 to 600 to 700 when we did the shards, it's suddenly like you would be at a space station, you could see other players come and go in a way that you wouldn't have done when there was just 100 players and a whole star system. And so you want a universe that feels alive.
Yes, please.
The problem with the way that we want to do Star Citizen is there's no game engine that like out of the box does the things that we do. And so a lot of what dictated the sort of creation of Star Engine, the vision of being able to essentially have no loading screens, it's all seamless, all first person, super high fidelity and detail, and also have the entire system be persistent. So, you know, if you drop a Coke can in a forest somewhere and walk away, that Coke can is remembered, the state of the universe is remembered. So unless someone comes and takes it, it will still be there if you came back even in a month's time or whatever. Having the tech to sort of do that at that scale, we just couldn't get it in Unreal, you couldn't get it in CryEngine, you couldn't get it in any, so we had to build all that. That's one of the biggest reasons of the length and the time and the cost of the project. And I personally think in terms of like a game experience, because when you actually get in and experience sort of the freedom that allows you, the sense of you can go anywhere and it's there and it's real. I see a lot of people play, despite all the bugs and all the issues I've got, Star Citizen gives me a sense of freedom that way that I don't get in any other game, and that's enabled by that technology. And so it was definitely worth it to build that. It just took a lot of time to do that. Besides just building something of the scale of Star Citizen, scaling a company to be able to do that is also it's like a separate game. So we're now about 1,000 people around the world. We've got 4 studios. That's very different than when you started and you only had a few people working on it, and then it's 20 and then 50. It becomes a big challenge just because it's such a big project and there's so much to do. And then we also have the added complexity of it's a live game. So as we're working on it, people are playing it and we can't be breaking it. So it's sort of like working on the engine of your car in the middle of a race and trying to still stay in the race. Like one of the problems that always happens is as the game becomes bigger and more featured with more content, more functionality and features, that also means there's more things that can go wrong when you add a new feature. So in terms of the extra testing you've got to do, someone could do something in a system over here and not realize that it breaks something over here. So all that sort of ramps up as the game gets bigger and closer towards finish. I mean, I will say that Star Citizen's never going to stop being developed, because it's a live product, so it's going to exist and we'll always be adding content and functionality and features. It'll be a living product. But there is our sort of version of 1.0 is what we would consider, okay, this is the sort of a set of features that describe the Star Citizen experience, and of course we'll add things in the future on top of this, but this is what we consider. It's not alpha anymore, this is the released game, so to speak. We outlined that 2 years ago at CitizenCon, and so that's what we're working towards. And so it was good to sort of finally sort of put a line in it and say, okay, these are all the things that we need to do. So everyone on the development side has a very focused goal for that, which is great. I mean, look, I started in the game industry in the mid 80s, and one of the things I always liked about it was sort of that feeling of being on the frontier and doing new stuff and stuff that you didn't think was possible. And so that's definitely what Star Citizen for me is. It's all like, well, can we really do everything at this detail and fidelity with thousands of players all concurrently online at the same time? And when we started, it was like, maybe not, but we've sort of stubbornly worked towards there, and still a lot of work, but it sort of feels like we're closer to the finish line than we are from the start line.
Interesting. I want to watch the future of Xboxing down and people having Mario Tennis fever. No, funny enough that. So yeah, I'm gonna catch up with Jack now because obviously we watched a lot of video. Here we go. Let's have a look. Oh god, I'm gonna have to go up quite a way. Everyone watched that Black Mirror episode? You know the ones with Rick Shaw? No, I don't know which one you're talking about. CIG are just trying to just create what Star Trek is like. Q is just Knight Rider trolling Picard. No comment. Makimu says SC is the only game where I log in and do absolutely nothing, have a great time, and log out again. You do nothing. Interesting. Yeah. So you play the game on your phone with another person, and it shows you gameplay in the verse to observers. I mean, sure. I suppose it has to bring a benefit to the game, but yeah. Julia Reyes says, "Hell yeah, can't wait to play Squadron 42." Yep. I think Star Citizen will move to Amazon Luna shortly after. That would reach the most people, people that don't have PCs and can play anywhere. Potentially. I don't know. I suppose it all depends on how the final kind of what's the word that I'm looking for? The final kind of server meshing client versus server stuff plays out. Maybe that's not possible if you're playing remotely, but I don't know. I don't know. I know so little about how those games are put together that I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other. Wuta, hello, good to see you. So Eve has 30,000 per shard. So I really hope Chris Rogers can manage it. And welcome in, buddy. I think Arcade Corner says it well. Eve is a lot simpler, and there's a lot less for it to manage, I think. But yes, I mean, if he's talking about 10,000 per shard, I think that's not bad. If you can then add in what they'd initially intended with Quanta, which they haven't yet replaced with anything else, as far as I can tell. They haven't told us that that's been changed. I think that's kind of. I think that's going to make it feel pretty damn alive. Early on, they talk about large ships might be their own server fighting each other with the main server. I mean, we'll see how big the battle cruiser is, right? In ILW in May, very very possibly. Watching other players is a valid loop. That's it. The video multiplied my SC fatigue by a factor of 10, says Luna. What is that? What was it about it that gave you more SC or SC fatigue? That's an interesting. Right, Chris Citizen, yep, that's it. Which says, problem is if everyone throws their coke cans on stations and they persist, they'll need to do weekly maintenance just to clear up clutter, so it would cause lag spikes and major issues. Well, what's really interesting is they talked about this a little while back, and they talked about the idea. It was when it was Elliot Maltby and the other chap as well, the guy Torsten, the guy that does all the engineering, and they talk about they want more procedural ways of doing stuff, systemic they called it, right? So rather than going, hey, we've got stuff we need to clean up, so we'll introduce a script, they'll do, we've got stuff we need to clean up, so how do we get the players to do it? How do we get the AI to do it? Right? Introducing AI cleaners and stuff to stations could be one thing. The other thing is just like, do you remember at the beach where you had glass bottles of Coke and you got a little bit of money back for handing the Coke bottle back in? That, so all the cans and stuff on the ground, you hand it back in, that could be rep. I'm not suggesting that anyone would do it if it was a couple of credits each, especially not seeing as those bottles are only like 4 or 5 credits to start with. But you could hand in it for a little bit of rep. So when you're sat at the station and you've got 3 minutes to wait while your ship claims, run around the station, pick some stuff up, get some rep with it, and the rep introduces discounts at the different types of stations. There's all sorts of ways they could solve it. We're getting the Misc Raptor, right? It's one of the referral rewards. So maybe that'll be one of the things that does, is it just goes in and sucks stuff up, and that's it. I mean, obviously that'll be doing it outside rather than in, but I think that's a pretty good way of doing it, especially with ships and wreckage and all that sort of good stuff, is the ability to maybe later on, even if you find bits of wreckage, putting the wreckage inside your ship and then taking it back to a station, just like you would do with goods to refine. Maybe you can take it back and get like a scrap merchant fee and all that sort of stuff. Just that random extra stuff that you can do in the game. Exactly, though, calculations for things like Maelstrom would be offloaded to their own server whose job it is to run those calculations. Exactly that. That's what true dynamic server meshing was originally pitched as. Maybe they find out that they can't do it like that, but that's what they'd intended, and at the moment they haven't told it. They haven't told us any different. That was actually a good interview, says Astra. It was. The Black Mirror episode where the girl gets trapped in a game that a weirdo was making. Okay, that worries me because instantly I know I've been on the internet like you guys have. I know what those sorts of weirdos you're talking about. But yeah. So yeah. Well, no. Then it is persistent, right? If you do the idea of systemic. So systemic is persistent because you're using players to clean it up, right? The phrase you're looking for is microservice architecture. For which bit? I don't even know what that means. Stop using big words. But yeah, so if the players are cleaning it up, it is persistent because if the players don't clean it up, it doesn't go anywhere, right? I see what you mean. In terms of the AI cleaners, it's still persistent. You kill all the AI, the stuff doesn't go anywhere. But having, in a normal state, having the system clean itself, as opposed to we've got to take the servers down for maintenance, right? This is one thing. I used to play a lot of Arma 2 DayZ mod, and those servers wouldn't last much longer than 3 hours. So every 3 hours you would have a server reset. And the whole point there was to clean all the dead entities and fix all the loot and all that sort of stuff, and then put it all back on. So yeah, salvage rep, exactly that. You know, in stations, like the amount of times I spend time at rest stops because I'm waiting 3 minutes for my ship to claim or whatever, I'll run round and I'll put all the stuff in the bin. They want that working a lot better, where it's just like, you know, it's like when you run up to hand one of the small courier packages in and there's a place for it, rather than having to maneuver your mouse around and wait until it stops seeing the front of it as a solid object and actually places it inside the bin, where you just go up and it's just got a place option and you just go bloop and then get some money or rep back for it. But I think that's a decent way of dealing with it. So there you go. My problem with what Chris Roberts is saying is that they always say soon. It takes 3 to 5 years for a tier 0 system, and that makes me so tired of his BS. He only focuses on Squadron 42. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's no argument with what you're saying in terms of it takes a long time for the core systems to get in. That being said, we can already see that it's picking up speed. If we look at crafting was shown at what, at the end of 24? It's now the beginning of 26, and we're about to get the tier 0 of it. So you're talking more 16 months. So that's not a bad place to be. You know, because they did say that work has only just begun on it as well. So it's not like they've been sat on it for 3 years and then kind of fed it to us. So, you know, it's getting quicker, but so much of it, we can't understate how important it was for server meshing, right? So much of it was getting server meshing online because you couldn't do much more with Stanton because it was entity packed. You couldn't have many more entities. In fact, when they first put Xenothreat in, they had to drop the server maximum capacity from 100 to 80 because the servers couldn't deal with everything that was on. And then, of course, it went back up to 100, and then they were playing slightly more than 120, 100, or even 200 in some instances. So, you know, they had that kind of that obstacle to it. And the problem is until you bring in server meshing, it's very, very hard to understand whether the problems that you're seeing in the game are because the server tick rates and refresh rates and FPS are the source of the problem, or whether there's something more systemic. Because if everything's bottlenecked, it's really hard to figure out, well, is this bottlenecked because of X or is it bottlenecked because of Y? So, you know, yes, the focus has been on Squadron 42. They've said as much. They'll get Squadron 42 out the door, and then I think we will see pace increase. Will it be immediate? No. We'll have an immediate spike. Squadron 42 will release. SC will suddenly, Progress will do that, and then it will do that again, right? Because what they'll do is they'll take all the stuff from Squadron that they're sitting on or perfecting for that game, and the stuff that's easy to port over, they'll port over during the course of like 6 months to a year, right? And then all of a sudden it'll be like, holy moly, now we've got, Vandal doing takedown mechanics. We've got Vandal in the verse. We've got, as in first person wise, we've got this, we've got that, we've got the other thing. We've got all this stuff coming across. And then all of a sudden it'll be like, hey, we've cleared the backlog and now we've got to get on with the other stuff. And then progress will slow down again. And then it will gradually speed up as they put more and more people into those different areas. So they will get there. It's just going to take, it's like anything with this, it's going to take a while. But, people keep talking about 1.0, and the most important point people need to bear in mind with 1.0 is 1.0 is just a moment in time. 1.0 isn't the silver bullet. 1.0 isn't everything's in. 1.0 isn't, we won't have the Endeavour, we probably won't have AI crew at that point. There's all sorts of stuff that won't be in at 1.0. They're going to keep working on this. And if anyone thinks, let's say they get through and they add all of the systems that they've suggested that they were going to add, right? And they've said in the stretch goals, so we get all 110 systems or whatever it is. Do we think they're stopping? Like, they're going to add other stuff. It's just going to keep going. And Star Citizen won't be done, even when they switch the servers off. When Star Citizen is finally run its course and no one is playing it anymore and it's going to be shut down, Star Citizen will still be work in progress. They'll still have stuff they want to add to it. There'll still be stuff being worked on, all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, it's just going to be, it's one of those things. And I think the best thing to do if people are frustrated with how long things are taking is, and this isn't me being petulant or anything like this, genuinely take time to go and do something else. It's going to be slow burn. This was always going to be the long haul. All you had to do was sit down for 5 minutes and think about what they were actually trying to achieve and how little of that actually existed in the game. Idea of games with no loading screens of this scale. The idea of dynamic server meshing. The idea of, entire planets that you can fly around and explore and do all this sort of stuff and things that you leave there for 3 months, the coffee cup, right? None of that existed. This was always going to take a very, very long time. But the biggest thing I'll say is look at where we were when Pyro came in and look at where we are now for things to do in the game, for stuff to keep you occupied. How many people are saying that they're coming back to the game? The concurrent players are up, the play session time is up. We're making more, I say we, I'm not part of it, but CIG are making more money than ever. The game is crowdfunding. We are giving more money than ever to them. Not because it's some corporate thing, right? It's not. CIG operate in a bubble. But they're obviously doing something right. And that is continuing because we just saw the funding tracking. So yeah, Anthony Vasquez, hello. Space 1-2 will be the new SC. I will press F to doubt on that one. So there we go. So Squadron 42, yeah. So Squadron 42 has been feature complete since the end of 2024. Squadron 42 has been entirely playable all the way through for some time now. So yeah. So there we go. Squadron 42 coming 2027. No, as far as we're aware, it's still 2026. There's been some creators who've banged on about it potentially being delayed through Grand Theft Auto. I have posed the question, not because I think there's a delay, but because I think that Chris will quite rightly, from his perspective, try and shoot for Game of the Year. And if you look at where Grand Theft Auto is actually releasing this year on PlayStation or on console, that's going to be a problem because it sits right on the cusp of, because it's about November, right, mid-November, that the awards happen. So it might fall one side of it, it might fall the other, depending on basically on when they decide to do the awards and when the game actually releases. So that might have caused them to kind of look at how they want to release the game or when they want to release the game, but we're not sure. Yeah, Endeavour and Crucible owners have a wait coming better than being hurried. Exactly that. So there we go. Right. Okay. So what I want to do now is there's a video by Havoc that just came out. I say just came out. It's been out for a little while, and it's an interestingly named video. So his video is entitled "I Need to Be Honest About Star Citizen Right Now," and I watched about 30 seconds, and I thought it might be something worth us watching and reacting to. So let's have a look. There we go. Right. Let's have a look.
I've been looking forward to 2026, and I still am. But I've got to be real with you.
Already love this guy's voice.
I'm not okay with some of the things that have been happening around this game lately. So I'm going to say this once, honestly, and then I'm going to move on. This isn't my usual kind of Star Citizen video. It's just my honest thoughts of where I'm at right now. But I also want to give you some context because, as some of you have likely noticed, I've been a bit inconsistent, or my energy's been off, or some videos have just taken
I like his t-shirt.
forever. It's not because I stopped caring. I recently got out of the military, and that transition's been tougher than I'd like to admit. Some days are perfectly fine, some days aren't, and it's not always obvious until it hits me, but the last year has been extremely challenging. And on top of that, there's been this ongoing thing for me where content creation has just been harder than it used to be.
I feel that in my soul, brother. Yep. Leaving the forces for whatever reason is a tough transition. It's a challenge. Things in what we call here Civvy Street do not operate like they do in the forces, and certain things that you take for granted, certain ethos, people's attitudes, even with people whose attitudes in the forces you determine to be poor or not of sufficient, kind of effort or whatever, of being of the level that you expect. Civvy Street is an entire different game ball. So I feel what he's saying, and I get that would definitely upset kind of content creation and stuff.
The usual creative spark just hasn't been as natural for me, and my drive hasn't been as steady. I've had multiple gear reviews get delayed way longer than they should have, and it's been a real struggle, and I genuinely feel bad that I've let it get this far and failed to deliver on some of the things that I've wanted to. And then you stack Star Citizen on top of that. For me, 4.4 and 4.5 were exciting in their own ways, but performance was rough. It kind of made it harder to want to log in and harder to want to record and come up with what to talk about each week. But 4.6 pulled me back in a little bit with the Alliance 8 event and some of the Evo Tech previews that I've been a part of. I had moments that reminded me why I play in the first place, and in some ways it revitalized my desire to be in the game again, and I think that I needed that a lot more than I realized. And I gotta say this too, because I genuinely look forward to ISCs. I really thought that Inside Star Citizen would get back into the swing of things by now. But we're almost 3 months into 2026, and we've had one whole episode. And if y'all thought I was bad about creating regular series content, well... But then we've had something else happen recently. A longtime content creator whose combat perspective I truly value has decided to step away from the game. And I'm not here to speculate on anyone's life. I don't care to do that internet autopsy thing. I just want to say that I genuinely wish him well, and I completely understand where he's at because I've been there myself. Back in 2019, I pretty much stopped following the game for a couple of years. When your head isn't in it or life gets too heavy, this stuff can stop being fun real fast. So if you're going through it and you need to step away, I completely get it. It's important to recognize those moments, and it's important to focus on yourself and your family when that happens. Now, here's the part that I've been wanting to respond to indirectly, but was concerned about fanning the flames of the drama, so to speak. And I'm choosing my words on purpose because I have.
So, I'll say this, is that I don't know who's talking about. Because So let's pause. So don't fill the comments yet with what's going on, because I'm probably, I think, going to reach the conclusion that actually, for me, it doesn't change what's being said or the value of it if I know who it is or it isn't, right? I will say this, that for me, my content has always been about how I feel about stuff. So this is probably not the way to do content creation. This is doing content creation wrong, but I will watch stuff that I'm interested in as a gamer. What I don't do is I don't watch content creation from the point, or content from the point being a content creator, because I'm barely speaking a content creator, right? It is at the moment. I'm not releasing a lot of videos. I've got to catch up with all that sort of stuff, and I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I've got some fun things that I'm kind of working around, but I don't watch that. And certainly when it comes to drama and that sort of stuff, I'll watch plenty of stuff about the Twitch dramas and all that sort of stuff, because that's just like, it's like a car crash. You know you shouldn't look at it, but once you see it, you really can't look away. So watching all the kind of Twitch stuff is just crazy fun, because it's just, you know, if I ever become those sorts of people, just take me around the back and shoot me, please. Just don't let me become one of them. I'm not interested. But when it comes to Star Citizen, like, this is a hobby for me, so it doesn't bother me, you know, who's having a go at who and that sort of stuff. There are people within the content community who have had an issue with me. There are people in the content community that I've had an issue with, and hopefully you guys have no idea who I'm talking about. Because I don't want to make that public, right? I'm never going to come here and farm drama for views. I'm just not, right? If I've got an issue with someone, that's me personally, and I don't want to get involved in that. There is one particular creator I do a really poor job, just because he absolutely rubs me up the wrong way. So people might be able to point to one when they go, well, actually, Badges, you kind of said this about this person. But, so I don't know who he's talking about here, and I completely understand what he's saying about not wanting to fan the flames, is that if you're doing this as a hobby, if this is a passion project for you and not necessarily, you know, it sounds certainly because he's just left the military, it wasn't his primary source of income. I don't know if that's what he's doing now or whether he's doing something else and this continues to be his passion project. But for a lot of us, and, you know, this isn't specific to X-Forces at all, that drama is just not something we want to step into. But also sometimes there's things that we can say, because we spend a lot of our lives around conflict, not just the tough stuff that people shoot at each other in, but, you know, I went away for 7 months at a time on a ship that's 100 meters long with 200-300 people on it, right? You can't get away from people. You can't avoid people. There is no space that is your own. My cabin was my office. Even when it's you're in bed, if something goes wrong, there's announcements over the ship's main broadcast, and you can't hide from it. You were never away from work, except when you were alongside somewhere, right? And you were able to walk away. Even then, you know, if you got drunk, you got in trouble, it would all come back to you being a member of the forces. So for 7 months, you were at work from start to finish. Full stop, the end. There is a lot of interpersonal conflict in that, and one of the best ways to manage that is by not getting involved in it, right? Is to have your boundaries and listen to other people when they have issues, but not get involved in it himself. It sounds very much like he's saying the same thing. So I'm going to let him keep talking also, because I didn't pause at a very flattering point on his face. But let's listen.
I have no desire to drama farm, and I'm not trying to turn YouTube into some back and forth reaction video. But I've watched some people over the years who brand themselves as the positive voices of the community start taking shots at other creators who have a different perspective. And that's what really bothers me. And it's not because people can't disagree about something. I think healthy disagreements can lead to growth and positive change. But it bothers me because it turns into this childish resentment, making comments like negativity sells and I wish I had their views, and they're only big because of their takes. That kind of energy isn't entertaining. it isn't helpful, and it's definitely not going to get you the views that you want. But what I will say is that if you want more views, you have to put in the work to try harder and do better. People want entertainment, not what you wish your view count was. And what gets missed in all of this is that the person they're talking about is usually deeply passionate about the game. They want it to succeed. They just think that it should be further along by now. And they're vocal about it. And that honestly doesn't make them a villain or make them toxic. It's just a different lens than what you have right now. So it's ironic to me to see someone claim the positive label and then turn around and talk negatively about another creator because they don't like their perspective. Doing a surface level analysis of a person and responding like you've got them figured out is just fake and disingenuous. You don't know them, you don't know what they've dealt with, you don't know what their relationship with the project is or why they say what they say. Honestly, if I feel a certain way about something, I put it through a filter. I think through it logically, then I wait 24 hours. Because a lot of the anger is just a moment. A lot of frustration burns off. And if it doesn't last, then it wasn't worth my time. But I've sat on this for a bit longer.
It's a really good point, and I think I kind of I do this a lot with not so much the same filter as what Havoc's talking about. I talk very much about the whole cyberpunk, right? Is the okay, well, we don't want games released broken. Okay, would you accept delays? Let's take the other side of that then. Well, no, we want them to release it on time. Well, okay, so if that situation exists where they have to delay it or release it broken, which one would you prefer? And that's when you get to this impossible ideal of, well, that shouldn't happen. They should be able to call something 2 years in the future. And invariably, people who do this, not all of them, but people who do this are the ones who can't manage getting to an appointment on time every time, right? And yet they expect other people to be prescient about what's going to happen 2 years in the future. And I know I've just done a surface level analysis, exactly what Havoc is saying not to do. I get that. I have my flaws, right? But I think it's a good point that he raises, is that there is what a lot of content creators are doing is coming online and they're giving you their honest takes, right? I certainly do that. I know a lot of other people will do that. The bit that that undermines that is I find it's not annoying, right? Let's be a little bit honest about this. Honest time with badgers. Come here. We're going to talk. Pull up a chair. Pull up a bollard, as we say in the Navy, and let's have a chat. Nothing disengages me from comments more than when people say things like, but that's what you're paid to say. But that's what you're going to say anyway. Because I've always built this on complete honesty, right? And if you're around in the Discord, this isn't a plug for Discord, if you're around in the Discord, the guys in the Discord will know that sometimes I get really fucking pissed off with the game. There's been times where I've been 45 minutes into a Friday night session, something happens, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to do something else. I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. I don't want to play this. I'm over it. I'm going to do something else. Sorry, I'm out. Right? And that happens. And that's what Havoc's talking about in terms of that filter of if that anger doesn't last, then it wasn't that important to begin with. And that's why what I then don't do is I don't turn on the camera and spout off about what's annoying me in the game. And I was responding to what Wuta was saying earlier, and I saw your comment, love you too, buddy. And I get it, and I don't ever think that you guys are just ragging on it. And, you know, I very quickly identify the people that come into chat and are here just to start an argument, right? And when I respond to them, I'm not responding to them, I'm responding to everyone else around them, right? And you just let them dig a hole whilst you respond reasonably. what I'm responding with is not so much I'm glossing over the bad, as someone's just said. And I know you weren't accusing me. I know you weren't accusing me. I'm not responding to it like that. Parker, I'm not responding to it like that. What I'm saying is I don't feel like I'm glossing over. What I feel like I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, I get it, but this is the normal stage of the process, right? This is like going on the marathon and saying, well, running shit because your legs hurt and then you cramp up and you hit the wall. And it's like, well, don't get me wrong. Clearly, I think running is shit. But, you know, it's like only marathon running where you hit the wall and you can't move and all this, that sort of running really long distances. Maybe not marathons if you're not used to it like me, right? But there is other running that you can do. There's other gaming that you can do. I'm not saying that these problems aren't problems in gaming. I'm saying with a game like Star Citizen that has been, since the beginning, very poor at hitting their targets, huge amount of scope creep, slow to implement stuff, building stuff out procedurally, focusing on the single player rather than the multiplayer. This is all just part of the process. So it's not so much glossing over about it. It's not that I don't think that stuff is bad. It's more a case of I'm sat here going, I was expecting the bad, and the bad was always going to happen, and that's the thing. And I think this is the part of honesty, especially people like Havoc, is that you come on and you try and be honest, and what you really suffer with is the people who are not necessarily dishonest, but the people who are, you know, adjusting for, you know, well, I think my views must be the best, therefore I should be getting the same views or better views than this person, and so on and so forth. And it's when you're trying to build something like a channel, when you're trying to succeed in this space, you are going to have much higher levels of success if you look inward at what you're doing. And that's why here, I've said to you guys, this is never going to be my full-time job. This is never going to be, you know, I'm never going to sit here and try to sell you stuff because I'm trying to sell you something. As with the model, the Scorpius model that hopefully I'll get to review soon, and the link to that's in the description down below if you want to look at that. All right, that was a little bit of a plug. But the point is, I'm not pitching that because it's the only thing I've been pitched. I've been pitched a few things to come and sell to you guys. And I'm only talking about this thing because I actually think it's a really good product. And that's all I will ever do. And I will just give you guys honesty, right? If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you I don't like it. If I like it, I'm going to tell you that I like it. This is why I'm never going to tell you what to do with your money. I'm never going to do ship reviews. I'm never going to do upgrade workshops. I'm never going to do any sort of this sort of thing, right? Because from my point of view, I know that there are certain things in the game space that I like that you guys are going to be sat there going, what is he on about? What? I don't see the value in this. I don't get it. Why does he want that? Why does he want that? I don't get it. Like the Reliant Mako. The Reliant ship with a camera pod on it. Most people are sitting there looking at that going, why would you want that ship? I want it, and you can't tell me otherwise. Right? So it's stuff like that is, you know, it doesn't matter what it costs. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the fact that I want that because my hobby says that I want that. And that's why I don't sit here and say that to you guys. And it is very hard to exist in an honest space where we're all just trying to build our channels and you know, reach out to people, build a community like we have done with DGP, when there is the negativity and the I'm going to attack other people because I think it elevates my own status. So I get what he's saying. We have gone so far round the houses now with this. We need to get back to what Mako's saying. So with Havoc saying.
And that I've thought about it for probably the last week, and it's still sitting there in the back of my mind, which tells me it's not just a passing mood. So I'm saying it now, not to start anything, but to give you all my thoughts on what I believe. I want the drama to die. I want us to quit eating each other alive over different opinions. I want to stop seeing creator versus creator like it's some kind of sport that we all need to engage in. Honestly, I fully expect this video to get maybe a handful of views, but I made this for all of you who might be at different stages with Star Citizen, and to give you some perspective of where I'm at right now with content creation, life, and the game. The truth is, I'm genuinely excited for what's coming this year. I'm looking forward to 2026, and I want this game to win. I want the community to feel like a community, not a comment section war or a series of reaction videos. I know this puts a spotlight on it, but I'd rather address it honestly than pretend it's not happening. And for me personally, as I'm adjusting to the new norms of my life, I'm trying to get back into the rhythm, and I'm trying to rebuild that creative momentum.
Yep.
I'm not here to fight other creators. I'm here to talk to all of you. And I would rather collaborate with other creators than fight with them, even if some of them don't want to engage with me. So yeah, that's honestly where I'm at. If you've been feeling the same way, tell me. If you think I'm off, let me know. Keep it respectful, but let's talk. And if you're one of the people who have been supporting me while I've been a little slower than usual, whether being a subscriber, member, or just a regular viewer, I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you. Fly safe, pilots, and I'll see you in the verse.
So this is Havoc. I shall pop his video in chat for you guys. Copy video URL, so you guys can have a look. Because I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of jealous of his voice. I want that kind of. I don't have that low register, but that's awesome. So go check him out. Obviously having a bit of a moment, but he seems to have done well with the video. He's 3,000 views. I think that's the other thing as well, is people see these sorts of comments around, I need to be honest about Star Citizen right now, and they'll go, oh, it's another creator drama, and it's this, that, and the other thing, right? And that happens a lot. And I get why people don't click. I don't generally tend to click. But what I've seen of Havoc's work, I was like, this is interesting. I'm not expecting there to be... I'm not expecting him to come out with any kind of crazy takes or anything like that. And funnily enough, he didn't. One of the things we do in our work in Coast Guard is I don't want people to think like me, because if everyone thinks like me and I can't see my way around a problem, then no one can, right? The whole point of gaming, from my point of view, was to bring us all together, right? And gaming connects people in a way that it never could, right? Looking at you guys, how many of you genuinely would I have met had it not been for gaming? And the answer, unless Napo or Rescue Shack jumps into chat, the answer to that is 0. I probably never would have met you guys and girls, right? I just wouldn't have seen you. So gaming's got a great way to connect, and it's just a really weird attitude to come into the space and then everyone kind of tear each other to pieces. I will say to you guys that the only creators that I feel any real animus towards are the ones who are being deliberately malicious. And by malicious, I mean, if you are going to spend your entire career talking about how CIG is, or Star Citizen is a scam, how CIG are just trying to get every penny they can out of you before they pull the parachute, run away, and leaving you hold a bag of nothing, and then the very first thing you do is put your referral code at the top of all your descriptions of your videos, that's dishonest, right? If you thought it was a scam, if you think they're just stealing people's money, if you think this company is full of the worst working practices in the gaming space, why would you ever think about referring anyone to it? And that's what I mean about that sort of stuff. And sometimes I struggle to keep a lid on who I'm talking about. I'm not going to tell you now. Some of you might know, some of you might not, but you get the point, right? So there was that. You've been stalking me since Dartmouth, says Dell. Well, that's not freaky in the slightest. You can't compare Star Citizen to other games. We get to see how the sausage is made with all the scraps and the lean meat together. It's what other game... sorry. I thought I couldn't read that because I'm blind. I couldn't read that because I don't think it's come through properly. games companies would never show you. Yeah, exactly that. Crazy how many views Havoc's reposted the squad. Yeah, it's up to like 5 million now, isn't it? Nice. Yeah, it's crazy. Depends if you get help for the army or not. I live in the Netherlands, I have a lot of help. So yes, so big shout out to people in chat who shared the stories. Ruta, you shared it. Julio, you shared one about leaving the forces. It's rough. I know there are other people, and I won't out them, but I know there are other people saying that the transition's been rough, right? Something like this is great because it gives us something to focus on, and it gives you kind of like a point to. You've obviously got your family in that, but from your work, your efforts that you put into things in the workspace, that doesn't go anywhere, right? And unless you come home and you just engage with DIY projects, something like this, something that feels meaningful for a very different reason, is kind of useful when you change from one thing to the other. I didn't have it when I left the Navy. When I left the Navy, it was mainly to because of things that were going on in my marriage, and obviously, you know, that went well. But yeah, so there we go. Yeah, that's it, Viper. And you know, again, I'm not, and this is why even though I feel that way about him, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to hammer him because there's no point, right? People will watch him if they want to watch him if it resonates with them. People who don't, who feel a similar way to me, will watch him and go, "Well, this is crap," and not watch it. So it's fine. But there we go. I was meant to be out of the army after 24 years, got desperate. I've just signed on for another 6. Definitely was not in the right place to get out this year. Well, Yorkie, I'm glad you've had that realization, my friend. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I was the other way. I was in a position where I couldn't stay in, so I completely get it from the other side of the fence, right? I couldn't. I didn't get to my immediate pension point because I just looked at how much more I had to do that, and I just thought I can't survive this much longer. Parts of me fundamentally disagree with the forces, not so much what they did, but the way they went about it. So yeah, and I'm not saying anything that's like, Badgers was doing war crimes. No, it's nothing like that. It was the admin and the bullshit, the level of bullshit that went through it, and every forces person listening to this or watching this just went, "Yep," because even if you're in, you know what I'm talking about. So it was that stuff that drove me out. But there we go. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, I get you, Yorkie, and I'm sorry you're dealing with that, bud. I mean, it's kind of par for the course, and certainly now. I mean, I did look momentarily at rejoining the Navy, because I thought it was going to be the best way to own a house. As it was, I've managed to. I'm spoiling something. Things are progressing on that front in another way. But yeah, I mean, when I looked at rejoining the Navy, they'd missed 40% of 1 year's recruitment target by the end of that year. So it's pretty scary. Hey, Tibble, clarity moment. He wasn't doing war crimes IRL in SC, maybe different. That, exactly that. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, so it's kind of an interesting. It's kind of an interesting video to see, and I'm not entirely sure who he's talking about. I mean, I could take a guess, right? But it is not immediately evident to me who he's talking about. So the last one we might want to look at, and I'm just going to have a look, see if I can find the message that he sent me. Here we go. So I'm just going to pause it. So hopefully it doesn't jump immediately to the point. Right. So this is also from the Enter Atmo esports thing. And this is about Squadron 42. So, I don't know where we are on the timestamp. I'm just gonna go back a little bit from where the timestamp is and see what they're talking about. So, apologies, we're going to be jumping in a non-curated thing. I didn't think we'd have time, but we got there just about. So, let me have a look. Let's transfer over. There we go. And here we go.
Yeah. I just want to say, more than anybody else I know at CIG, Chris reads everything. Like at all hours of the day, like page 38 of Spectrum or page 9 of Reddit or whatever, he'll post in chat, hey, what's going on here? So just know that, as far as getting things fixed, if there's anybody who you want to be reading all the feedback most, it's him, and he is.
Well, there we go. So we talk about, that was a good one. So thanks for letting them know. I mean, a lot of people are really excited for so many things in the game, but with features like refueling, exploration, longevity of combat encounters, and other core mechanics still evolving, how do you guys currently prioritize, refining existing systems versus adding new ones?
Okay, well, I'll take that. To a certain extent, I will say that we're using Squadron as a bit of a test kitchen for some stuff. So one of the things that is hard to do in Star Citizen is sort of experiment and play around with stuff because it's an active live game. So if we change something, there's usually, there's people that like it and people that don't like it. That's just the nature of the beast. So there's a lot of stuff that we're balancing, like the new flight model, the atmospheric flight model that happens, with proper aerodynamics. Is in Squadron, and it will come across into Star Citizen. Same on the FPS. There's a lot of improvements through FPS, feel, play.
Nice. So, atmospheric flight model and stuff. Like I said, remember I said that there would be the peak of, well, we've got, whatever it is from Squadron and we'll bring it across. Sounds like atmospheric flight model is one of those things.
Everything that will come from Squadron into Star Citizen. That's part of what we do, and not all of it obviously will be in Squadron, like things like the crafting.
Yep.
The inventory stuff is much more Star Citizen specific stuff. And it is a challenge of delivering the full featured system and not a partial one, because part of the problem sometimes is you deliver things like engineering doesn't have all the things that it will in the final version, and so not everyone can see the full context of it.
Yeah.
And so that makes it a bit more challenging, because you're like, oh, this doesn't work because of this, and I'll be like, yeah, I know, but when these things come online, then it will all make sense. And so that is actually that is one of the biggest challenges we have on the Star Citizen side, is how to roll that out. So we're trying to make sure that we cook it a little bit better going forward. But, I'm sure we'll get called out on Reddit and everywhere else.
Shout outs to Reddit, yeah. Any other comments from Sandy or Tyler? No? Okay. All right. One thing I want to talk about that you guys really surprised us, because we have, in the Demo Rally, we actually have multiple teams that race in VR. And these guys are like, they take it serious. They're like, they have a whole cockpit with VR, and they're literally racing Daymar Rally, which is in the truck division, which is like a 7-hour race, depending on your experience. And they're in VR the whole time. But you guys did a great job just kicking out VR. And how is there more coming for VR in Star Citizen?
Yeah, there's definitely more. I mean, so for a start, I mentioned it before, but Squadron will be fully VR supporting too.
Oh, wow.
So you can play that, which is going to be pretty cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be very cool. You can reach out and touch Gillian Anderson. Not inappropriately if you want.
I just want to be sure we're live, right?
But so we're pretty committed to, making the VR implementation the best that you've seen in gaming for any game. I mean, I think already, even the experimental mode,
Yes.
just the nature of Star Citizen, the fact that it does so much detail but also scale,
VR is kind of perfect for it because you can walk up and actually feel the difference of an Idris compared to just getting into a Hornet or something like that. And you also can get up close and sort of see all the detail that the ship artists have put into the ships, or the environment artists have put in the environment in a way that on a flat 2D screen you can't. So that part's really great. We're going to be supporting more VR specific controls, so VR controllers as well as the general control stuff we do at the moment. So it is an ongoing project, and one of the other aspects is the UI side of things, which still has to be dialed in. It's sort of improved from the experimental release in Christmas, and 4.5, 4.6 has a few improvements, but it's still got quite a long way to go. But it is definitely on our plan, and so when Squadron releases, it'll be full featured, and the same parity will be in Star Citizen. But I think as headsets become lighter, and you've got a little more power on your machines, then VR becomes more viable. Because doing it now on a high resolution head, like an OLED that isn't too heavy,
Yeah.
it's a totally different
They're all
experience
heavy, yeah.
than doing it on a VR headset 10 years ago. Because we actually had VR in the beginning, like in the very early stages, and then we disabled it because we were rewriting the graphics renderer and the engine, and so all that had to change. And so now that we've sort of got the next gen renderer in, which is in the Vulkan stuff and the other stuff we have, and it's also in, with ray tracing is, will be coming to Star Citizen because it's in Squadron right now, and it will come across into Star Citizen. That's enabled us to be able to do the VR support. So it'll be good, and we got some passionate people in our.
So I'm going to pause it there just for a second, just because there's something I want to pop up for you guys. But yeah, so that's the Enter Atmo Esports. I can link that video as well. I'm going to pop that in, but I'm just going to pop this poll up very, very quickly because this is going to kind of be useful for me to know. In the meantime, here's the Twitch video. That is timestamped, so it's going to come out at the beginning of like the engineering salvage gameplay question that he did. But there's that, right? And obviously, if you want to watch more of it, then by all means. There's a reason I'm asking about the VR stuff. Is that I have been looking into it. And I will be putting it's on my list of videos that are being worked on at the moment. Star Citizen VR. So if you are someone who's wondering how VR works, how easy it is to put together, how any of that works, then you probably want to hang around for a bit. And just keep your eyes out for that video, because I was a complete VR noob, right? Until this headset turned up. Okay, so it's a sponsored thing. I was contacted by a company who, and the most important thing I can say here is the only reason I took the offer was because they told me I could say whatever I wanted. If they hadn't said that, I would be none the wiser. But they didn't. They told me I can say whatever I wanted, which is awesome. Hey, Stuart. Hey, Striker. Good to see you. So I went from no idea, I don't have a space for it, I don't know whether my rig is even going to run it, blah, 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 blah. I went from that to trying Star Citizen in VR. And we need to talk about it because it's interesting. So yeah, I'm going to do that in future. So if that's something you might be interested in terms of just knowing how it works, what sort of rig it runs with, is a 5600X with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 and a 3080 powerful enough to run a very good VR headset? So no one would find out and just wait for that video. So yeah, we're going to talk about all that sort of stuff, and it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see it. Which, without giving too much away, I'm really excited to bring that video to people, because for every reason that I could say is going to spoil something in the video, so I won't. But I found it very interesting, and if you're in Discord, you will hear little bits of it. I sit there and I talk about it with people, and I've talked about the experience of having the headset on, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for. It's going to be very, very interesting, I think. So yeah, there we go. We are at that time again, ladies and gents. But yeah, I just wanted to bring some. Wow, I just got flashbanged again. I just wanted to bring some of that stuff to you and see what you think. VR always makes you nauseous. Yeah, I kind of get that. I'm very interested in VR, but I haven't pulled the trigger on a headset yet. Interesting. If you're willing to wait a little bit, it might be willing to wait for that video because it came from a company I didn't even know existed. And now I know that they exist. I'm very interested in what they have to offer. But I'm going to call it for now because I'm busting for the loo and there's no point in having a break and then coming back and saying the outro. So there's no point. But thank you very much for being here. It's good to see you all. Hopefully a new video up within the next 2 weeks. So keep your eyes open for that. Other than that, always a pleasure to have you here. You've been watching Drinkers with Gaming Problems. Thank you very much for stopping by. See you soon.